Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
With a completely new city council and all the changes from our charter reform coming soon, Portlanders have a rare opportunity to push for real progress on some of our city's biggest challenges. But all these big changes can make keeping track of how these issues tie into the election more difficult. So today on CityCast Portland, we're kicking off our series breaking down some of those big issues and which candidates are leading the charge. And in this episode, we're focusing on transportation. Bike Portland publisher Jonathan Moss is here to help us sort it all out. It's Tuesday, August 20th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. What would you say are the biggest issues regarding transportation right now in Portland?
Well, I think if we had to sort of break it down into, let's say, 3 issues, I think the first thing we'd have to talk about are just that the streets are still too unsafe. Mm-hmm. Too many people are crashing into things, crashing into people, being killed, all sorts of stuff. So streets are just way too unsafe. We're not doing a good enough job reaching that Vision Zero goal that folks might have heard about. The other thing I would say, just looking at the system broadly, is that too many people are still driving cars. Especially on short trips, where if you look at our city goals, if you look at what I think a majority of Portlanders would agree to is it would make a great place to live, we need to get more people not driving cars for short 2-3 mile trips. So that means we're not doing a good enough job getting people into transit on bikes and stuff like that. So the other thing I would think about, which again, I know these are all related, but just the lack of political leadership. I know that, there's a sense that community really has to step up and advocacy is really important and activism has a big role. But I think in the context of Portland right now, we just haven't had a really strong, let's say, like champion in City Hall to really reform the transportation system in the way that would align with the goals we've already adopted as a city.
Yeah. So how are you seeing these 3 issues show up in the upcoming election?
Well, it's actually been really tough to not see like transportation related stuff with all the folks that are running for council and mayor. I've been super excited to see how many of the 80 or so candidates are actually, not just putting it on their website, but actually living it and doing it. It's been really quite amazing to see. We've had overall probably about 40. So I would say about half the candidates overall have either spoke or just attended one of the bike happy hours. There's been a ton of them went to a Sunday Parkways ride. That's the big open streets event. Folks were out there biking. A lot of them are showing up to these bike bus rides that are happening where they're helping kids get to school safely, riding bikes together. And if you just look at their social media posts, there lots of the candidates are writing things about transportation, talking about how we need to do things differently, and just really centering it as a priority in their campaign.
Well, which candidates are you the most excited about that have been showing you that they're not just pandering, that they're actually centering their campaign around the issues that matter to you? You want to take some time and go through, let's say District 1. Who are the candidates there that you're like, okay, these are the ones?
Yeah, for sure. District 1, East Portland. I mean, this is really an embarrassment of riches if you look at who I think are actually, if you look at the contributions and who seem to be the most viable candidates and leaders in District 1. I'm talking about Steph Ralph and Tamar Ender jump out at me. They both, not just in their campaigns, but in their lives and in their careers even have done a ton of work around transportation. Regarding Steph, she's been more on like the organizing, nonprofit leadership side. She's worked for Oregon Walk. She was their first executive director back in the day. She's worked at Community Cycling Center. She's been really present in a lot of the bicycling activism and fun rides that we do. She's just been out there. She wrote a book about how to move by bike. It's been a tradition for years in Portland for folks that are moving to just post it on social media or what we used to do, email, and then everybody shows up on bikes and they move their stuff from one place to another by bike. So Steph wrote a book about that. So her credentials are very deep. Timur Ender is someone who's spent, I believe, 10 years working at the Portland Bureau of Transportation, actually in the project implementation side. And
Oh, cool.
he did a lot of stuff in the district he's running in. So this is a candidate who can literally bike around the district he's running in and point out projects that he helped shepherd through the process and get on the ground. So
That's baller.
That's
Yeah.
about as baller as you can get. You know, everything from,
Yeah.
from crosswalks to crossings of busy streets. And he's got young kids that he bikes around the streets of East Portland. So those are two really legit candidates in terms of doing this transportation stuff.
Wow, cool. Well, let's talk District 2, our district, Jonathan.
Yeah.
What are you excited about in our district? I'll be honest, I'm overwhelmed with all the people who are running because everyone seems like good. Like, I'm just like, yeah, I'd vote for you. Yeah, I'd vote for you.
Yeah.
I'd vote for you.
Yeah,
You know?
there's just a lot of good candidates in each district, I think. And I want folks to know, like, you're saying who am I excited about? And I want folks to know these aren't necessarily, I'm not like endorsing these people. I'm speaking
Gotcha.
from someone who's trying to represent the community's interest in transportation and people who I think have the double thing of like understanding the issues around transportation and who are also like viable from an electoral perspective, right? I'm trying to balance that with how I'm looking at these lists. So when I look at District 2, North and Northeast, which is where I live, there's three names that really jump out at me. First one's probably Nat West, the former craft cider maker. This is somebody who has been going around on his bike a lot during his campaign. He also is leading a cider ride, I think, this weekend. So he's hosting a bike summer ride.
Oh, really?
Where he's going to go, visit some cider places and give away a bunch of cider.
Also, isn't he also a bus driver?
I think he stopped doing that, but he has done.
Okay.
He was a bus driver for a bit, a TriMet bus driver. So I mean,
That's so cool.
yeah, and he wrote a lot about it online and really seemed to embrace that. So this is a person who I think is really going to deeply understand the need for transit. And I think he said the other day his family's pretty much car free, or he's like 80%. So I'm sure Nat's going to be good on pushing for changes in the transportation system. The other person I would say would be Marnie Glickman. Somebody who I've also done a ride with and interviewed extensively. She actually gets around with a trike, with a 3-wheeled bike. Just more recently, she started riding that because of some balance issues she was having. I mean, the other day she wrote a newsletter email out to all of her donors and all of her volunteers and all of her people that was specifically around bicycling. She kind of tied it to Bridge Pedal, which was last weekend, the big, huge ride with 10,000 people. And she had all these bullet points about what we need to do to increase bicycling in Portland. The other person I have to mention in District 2 is Mariah Hudson. She has been really vocal about wanting to support bicycling. She's posting about bicycle issues on Instagram. She's also been the chair of the Transportation Bureau's Budget Advisory Committee. So that's a pretty wonky, big volunteer role that people do that's unpaid. So that, I think, shows a level of commitment to the Transportation Bureau that's notable.
That's awesome. Just a quick thing about each one. Marnie Glickman, there was this whole thing where people weren't sure if she lived in Portland, which is funny.
Yeah.
But she does live in Portland, right? She's no longer living in Marin.
No, I've actually been to her house. So I've been to her
Okay,
backyard.
so she does indeed have a house in District 2.
Yes, absolutely.
2, Nat West. I'm just excited because I loved his cider. And I really loved his outpost in North Portland. Do you remember?
Yeah.
It really bummed me out when they closed.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, let's go to District 3. I know from a little prep that we did with the producer, there's a few.
This one's super hard. And it should be, right? Because I think traditionally inner Southeast Portland has been where a lot of like the transportation minds of Portland have been. And I think we don't want it to always be down in there. I mean, like I say that because like there was a time where like 3 or 4 successive leaders of like the Bicycle Transportation Alliance back in the day were like living within a few blocks of each other in Southeast. So anyway, yeah, I think the first one we have to talk about is Steve Novick. He hasn't really, at least from what I can tell, he hasn't been campaigning a ton yet. I'm sure he's going to be, making a big late push here. But this is somebody who has been the commissioner of the Transportation Bureau in the past on city council, so he understands how the sausage is made, although new form of government, be a little different process. But he's a very savvy politician. And I think Novick deeply understands like just the importance for the city of getting more people on the bus, more people on the bike lanes. He's somebody who almost like, well, you could say he sacrificed his political career to help the city's transportation budget and was the person who really laid the groundwork for the successful passage of the 10-cent per gallon local gas tax that we've renewed as voters now, I think 3 or 4 times, the Fixing Our Streets measure. It was former Commissioner Steve Novick's work that really laid the groundwork for that to happen. And
Wait, are you saying that he wasn't reelected because of that? And that's why Chloe Eudaly came in?
That's the conventional wisdom. I don't agree with that, but it became a thing because he went on some interview in the media and people were obviously mad because he was talking about some kind of street fee, right? Before we arrived at the 10-cent gas tax thing, he was really pushing for this different kind of like street fee, but same idea. And he said famously, right, like, if you don't like it, vote me out.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You don't say that.
But that's Steve
That's
Novick.
like second to the other thing you don't say is like, oh, you're going to punch me? Punch me in the face? You're going to punch me? You don't say that either.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, Steve Novick is, he is who he is politically. He has a reputation, but he has gone to the mat for transportation stuff. I mean, I saw him at the opening of like the Big Better NATO protected bike lane, which is a project he really helped shepherd through over years.
It's good.
It's great.
It's good too.
The other person we'd have to talk about, boy, this is tough. I mean, have to mention Rex Burkholder. I mean, this is somebody who in the 90s founded, what's still a major advocacy group in Portland around transportation. So Rex is, the story is that Rex Burkholder founded the Bicycle Transportation Alliance in his kitchen. So he was around these issues for years. He's also the person that spearheaded the lawsuit against the city of Portland for not putting a bike lane through the Rose Quarter right in front of Moda Center back in the day. That really,
nice.
Yeah, it really put the BTA, which is now called the Street Trust, really put them on the map as an advocacy group. So they won that lawsuit and forced the bike lane, and the rest was history. The one little mark against Burkholder when it comes to transportation is that he actually supported the previous iteration of what's now called the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, the big multi-billion-dollar thing. I have had a little bit of mending to do with Burkholder and on my relationship over the years, because it was my interview where he actually admitted that he supported what was used to be called the Columbia River Crossing. And it led to like a huge amount of criticism in transportation circles.
I understand that a lot of people in certain transportation circles just think it's a money pit, but don't we need a bridge to cross that river?
Yeah, the big confusing thing about that project is we absolutely 100% need a bridge, but we don't need 5 miles of wider freeways on each side and huge park and rides and massive interchanges, which is where the bulk of the money is being invested. Every time these transportation agencies want to widen a freeway, they always throw in another thing. On the interstate bridge, it's we need to replace this old bridge, and 99.9% of their communications is about a bridge, but they never talk about all the other widening for 5 miles on either end or all the interchanges, right? That's the huge thing that people don't want. So if you look at the Rose Quarter, same thing. They've latched on to the Albina vision as a way to get their wider freeway. Anyway, but the reason Burkholder wanted it is because, again, they also said, hey, it's your only chance to get light rail train. It's your only chance to get a max across the river. So well-intentioned progressive people like Rex Burkholder were sort of convinced that, okay, well, if you give us a max line, then I'll support your big freeway project. But I don't think that's a good calculation, just in my opinion.
A max line to Vancouver would be awesome, though.
Yeah, it'd be cool. But I think, we have to really just insist on, we need the good stuff without the bad stuff, right? I mean, that's the thing.
I'm curious why 5 lanes.
Yeah, they need the biggest project possible to have as much, right, management positions and construction jobs as possible. And also, it also goes to the federal side. That's what the federal government will pay for it the most. It's not the best decisions for people like you and I. It's what's best decisions for managers, contractors, election, politics and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Yeah. So I think the other two we would need to mention in District 3 in Southeast is Angelita Murillo. She is somebody who's I'm very happy to say, newly on a bike. We helped connect her with a bike from one of our regulars at Bike Happy Hour.
Have a bike before?
I don't think she had one. No, she never owned one before this campaign. Yeah, we connected her with a guy in town who gets used bikes and sets people up with bikes that fit them. And she's been super happy. And I went on a ride with her and she's been biking around. saying that she's really enjoying it. She's also just, very intentionally progressive, someone who fights for working class people. She has been a bus rider for a long time. So I have no doubt that when she's in office, she's going to prioritize, these progressive changes to transportation system. So yeah, a lot of great candidates in District 3.
All right, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we return, we'll be looking into candidates from Northwest and Selwood's District 4. This year's Calvin and Meiho Tanabe Address, which is the annual lecture the OHSU Foundation puts on that brings thought-provoking speakers to Portland, is featuring a non-human keynote speaker for the first time in its nearly 10-year history. And no, it's not a super smart, shiny monkey like I assumed and am probably still wishing for. They're actually hosting Sophia the Robot, an AI-powered humanoid who has spoken at the UN and is the first machine to receive citizenship. I guess that's cooler than a monkey. Sophia has captured the imaginations of global audiences since her debut at South by Southwest 8 years ago. Her interactive talk takes place on Wednesday, November 13th at the Newmark Theater. It's all about the awe-inspiring potential of AI and robotics to advance healthcare and life sciences, and we should probably all go because it might be our only chance to getting good with one of our new robot overlords. So go grab your tickets today at ohsufoundation.org/Tanabe. That's TANABE. Well, let's go over to District 4. That's Northwest.
Yep, Northwest and District 4. Don't forget, it's also Selwood, Westmoreland. And
you're right. It's
yeah.
Northwest and Selwood.
Yeah, and Northwest Industrial, going way north into the industrial zones, like I think almost to like the St. John's Bridge on the west side. So it's a really interesting district, and downtown. So lots of different, types of people and types of land use and stuff in District 4. It's going to be really interesting to see how that gets governed and who emerges as the winner there. But I've got to say, in District 4, I think the first person I'd have to mention is Chad Likens. He is somebody who, my first experience with him was when he was emailing me way early in the campaign saying, "Hi, I'm running for District 4. My name's Chad Likens, and I want to have the best transportation platform in the race. I heard you're the person to talk to. What do I need to know? What needs to be in my platform?" That was literally,
wow.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this guy's got my attention.
He's the chess guy, right?
He's the chess guy. The other two I'll mention, first one would be Mitch Green. Mitch Green's been talking a lot about transportation on the trail. I think he's going to legitimately, care about it once he gets in office. I know his campaign manager is a former planner at the Oregon Department of Transportation, and also someone who's worked at the national level on safe routes to school and is a big transit advocate. So it's really in the blood of the Mitch Green campaign to be great on these important transportation issues. And then the last person we've got to mention is Olivia Clark, who, is one of all three of these folks are leaders in the district right now. If you look at contributions and just campaign donations, Olivia Clark is a former government relations person for TriMet. So, yeah, she's definitely she's endorsed by Metro President Lynn Peterson and some other folks who've been pretty big in the transportation world. So I think, once you've been in the position that Olivia Clark was in, her big thing was on the Orange Line, right? So the most recent MAX line out to like Oregon City. And it was Olivia Clark who was like setting up basically all the real estate development deals and smoothing out all that stuff to get that project through. So
that's awesome. Mitch Green, I think he's the one who has a PhD in some sort of thing. Like he's like an energy
economist.
Yeah.
Which is actually pretty radical if you think about transportation.
Yeah.
Because one of our big issues on transportation is figuring out the money.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to make the system reflect our goals in terms of how we actually raise the funds? So
yeah, when I heard of him, I was like, I want to vote for him. Like, it sounds like anyone who's like, I know where the money goes. I know how the money works. I'm just like, that's what we need. We have a lot of people with great ideas who have no clue how the money works.
Yeah. And no offense to the economists out there, but like he doesn't look like an energy economist or talk or act like one.
And he's got tattoos.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
He's a cool guy. Yeah,
he's been out there, having fun. So that's great.
Any candidates that are somehow, I know this is going to be such a random question, but I'm curious, any candidates that are somehow against moving forward with our city's transportation goals?
Well, I think two come to mind. The first one is Noah Ernst, who I think is a relatively new candidate in District 1. He's sort of mid-pack right now. I don't know if he's going to be necessarily viable, but it's worth mentioning because so far he's the only person who is actually posting on social media that we need to like reverse transportation stuff. Specifically, like he's going out and making the division. You know, there was a big project on Southeast Division. It included a long concrete median in the middle. The city says it's there to make it safer so people can't fly in and turn off there and fly into all the driveways to businesses. Folks may know it's been pretty controversial over the years. Some business owners have really hated it. The city actually went out and took out part of it at one point to appease some upset people. So it's been controversial, but for the most part, it's, you know, I agree with the city. It's a necessary thing to calm down the traffic on Division. So this Noah Ernst person is out there, you know, saying we need to just get rid of the whole median. And he's also saying bad things about neighborhood greenways, criticizing what's a current project on one and saying, you know, the line of like,
he's talking shit about greenways?
yeah, the idea that we need to get back to basics and like, you know, fix streets before we do these silly things. And it's like, a lot of us think fixing streets is the stuff we're doing on greenways. But yeah, so he's catering to that kind of vibe in Portland. I think it's also worth mentioning that he works for and is a lawyer for Radio Cab. So
oh, that's interesting.
You know, there's that. His livelihood depends on like the free flow of driving all over the city. So I'll just leave that, let people make their own connections. So, but besides Noah Ernst, I think it merits a mention that Dan Ryan, current Commissioner Dan Ryan, has been actively basically talking smack about some really important, you know, projects really. The way he talks about some of these transportation things in his role on council, and because he's not the transportation commissioner, these comments have come in the last several months. They've come when he, like, before they vote on something, he'll add his 2 cents. And he has several times mentioned how inconvenient and how hard it is to like now make a U-turn on Division, for instance. And he's been very supportive of some of the people who I think are, you know, not correct in saying that the Division project is terrible. He's been sort of like supporting and highlighting some of their comments. So that is a real red flag for me around Dan Ryan. He's primarily someone who drives a car. And not only that, but he is also using his pulpit up as a city council person to basically throw shade at PBOT for their projects. He's also made comments that are like really kind of like, not necessarily dismissive, but he's like calling out PBOT staff that have been in front of city council asking for like, we need more studies and, you know, what's really going on here. And the whole classic line is, you know, Claudia, when a politician says this, they say, we need to make sure we're listening to these concerns, you know, after the city's done months and months and months of listening to concerns, but it's just not the ones that he wants. Right. So anyway, I think I don't think Dan Ryan would be good for transportation.
So Dan Ryan, that's District 2. That's our district.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our mayoral candidates. You know, who that is running is really prioritizing transportation issues.
Yeah, number one name in the mayor race is definitely Keith Wilson. He is somebody who owns a trucking company, a major trucking company. It's not just somebody delivering lettuce, you know, on the Central East Side or something. This dude's like, he's running, you know, dozens and dozens of trucks all over the state, and I think Pacific Northwest, Idaho too, and Washington. I first met Keith Wilson just talking about traffic safety issues because people getting hit by large trucks in Portland has been just a really difficult problem in Portland for years.
Yeah.
Keith emerged as somebody for me years ago who really cared about the issue, wanted to talk about it. So I would like, you know, use him as an expert source kind of thing. And recently a couple years ago when Sarah Pliner was killed over on Southeast Powell and 26th, Keith actually put presentations together to show the city how to make it better and change the lane configuration and like diagrams. Like he really does care about it. Now I think he's actually getting some major traction, and you see his donations on the small donor election site. He's really starting to come up. So I've been saying for months he's the dark horse for the mayoral race. And so it's been interesting to see, but he is absolutely number one, the best transportation person in the field.
I do think it's ironic that it's somebody who owns a truck fleet that is the best at, you know, progressive transpo policies. Don't you think that?
Oh, 100% agree. As somebody who's covered how freight and trucking advocates are literally in a lot of ways the biggest impediment to progress on transportation issues, both locally and at the state level, that is an absolute fact in my opinion. Can I say that? Keith's been awesome on transportation so far.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Who's another mayoral candidate that you are looking at?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I think.
Sorry.
I think
you came in with reservations already.
Well,
so who's this?
It's tough because
drum roll?
It's tough because he's next to I think we have to mention Rene Gonzalez
Okay. Oh, okay.
in terms of transportation. He's someone who regularly bikes around town. He's been doing, the city of Portland has started a bike bus, which is where all the employees meet up and ride together. And there's been like tons and tons of people doing it, which is cool. And there you see, current Commissioner Gonzalez right in the front with a big smile. So he's definitely someone that bikes around. And I do think that's important. He understands the issues as somebody who's seen it firsthand. And we all know he's a TriMet rider. So
he used to ride the TriMet. That's what I've heard.
Until he had a bad experience. So, I do think Gonzalez would be somebody who would at least understand and have it on their radar. Now, what he ends up doing about that, and I think he also would listen to a lot of interests that are anti-progress on this stuff. That's a big concern of mine. But at least he's sort of like in the mix and at least talking about it and a participant in some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. He does ride his bike. He is a bike rider. And I feel like if you enjoy riding bikes, it's at front of mind. You know what I mean?
For sure. And if he goes on to be mayor and somehow aligns himself with an effort or something or a decision that is completely anti-bike, it even makes it that much more uncomfortable and hard for him. And the public's going to just it's going to be really awkward and not great politics because he's obviously a bike rider. And so if the knock on Gonzalez is that he's listening to, some of the wrong folks, if he goes against biking, yet his social media is full of him smiling on a bike, it's going to be pretty easy for Portlanders to go, this dude ain't real. Like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, the mayor race. I think Carmen Rubio would be solid for transportation, but I think the problem with her is that she's just not super, I don't know what she's really all about in general. Both her and Keith are the only two mayoral candidates that I think are worth mentioning that have been answering this questionnaire that this nonprofit Bike Cloud has been doing. But I think Rubio, she knows the right things to say, but I don't know if I can point to a lot of actions that show she is really going to prioritize transportation. She's obviously shepherded the Portland Clean Energy Fund through, which essentially that pot of money, that tax on big businesses, essentially saved the Transportation Bureau's budget this year. And that's Carmen Rubio's thing. That's her bureau. But that was already started. It's not like she created it or, she just basically shepherded it through. She supports it, so don't get me wrong. But I haven't seen a lot of actions from her that I'm like, wow, she's going to be amazing and excellent for transportation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for going through some of the candidates that are representing, our city's goals in transportation and, going through some of the issues as well.
Thanks for having me, Claudia. It was really fun to talk.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.